Okay, this is me going through how to set up wire deformers for stylized eyelids on a rig. I'm also going to be going through some hierarchy stuff just so that you get a better idea of the best way and best practices to set up a hierarchy on a rig that has both joints and deformers. So here's my rig. He's just a guy. It's like a Mike Wazowski head. He's got eyelids. I've given him a little eye control so he can look around. He's got a head control. And he's got like a global control, and he scales and stuff, right? And that's it. Pretty simple. Let's just zero everything out here. Make sure we're all good. Cool. But what we're interested in doing right now is setting up wire deformers on his eyelids so we can sort of peel his eyes open and shape his eyelids to get some really stylized, cubic, spliny shapes on there, right? But before we do that, let's go through the hierarchy as it is right now, just so you get a good sense of the best way to set this up. So I've got everything in this big group just called head rig, character rig, right? And in this group, we've got our global control and our geo group. The geo group just has all of our geometry in it, which in this case, they're all just spheres, basically. And something that's important for this geo group that we need to do right quick is make sure that inherits transforms is turned off in the attribute editor. That's just going to help us not get double transforms later. So now here we've got the global control, and under the global control we've got an offset control. It's good to have two. Why have one when you could have two, I guess. This way, you know, you can have like you can bring in the character, and the first global control will have him at world origin, and then you can move him to where he needs to be in the scene before you start animating him with the offset control. Anyway, that's the way I like to do it. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. And under this offset control, we have our control group and our joint group. Now, in our joint group, we just have our head joint, and we've got 3 joints under that. We've got one for the eyeball and one for each eyelid. The eyeball joint has an aim constraint to this control so that, you know, it's always aiming at this control so it can like look around when I move this. Very handy. These top and bottom lids just have parent constraints. Something important about this is you'll notice that I have the controls up here, but their pivot is right at the center of the eyeball, which means when I move these around, it'll slide perfectly over the surface without like clipping through the eyeball or anything like that. Same thing with this one. And that's pretty much it. For the controls, very simple. I've just got the head control, the eye controls, and these top and bottom controls. So, this is our rig. We can do better. So let's get into how to improve this with wire deformers. So we need to go through and set up our wire deformer. Essentially what a wire deformer is it's a NURBS curve like this that is acting as a deformer on our object or our geometry, right? And the idea is that if we take its components and turn this into a new shape, this sort of shape curvature will be applied to our geometry as a deformer, which is really, really useful because it gives us really clean, simple, curvy shapes really fast. So let's rename this. We're going to call this top wire CRV curve. And the first thing I'm going to do is move this to where it needs to be. We want this curve to be affecting the eyelid, and we want it to be affecting like right here where the eyelid like peels open. So to do this, I'm going to just move it to the same position as the eyelid. Actually, let's make sure this eyelid position is good. Yeah, that's fine. So let's move it to the same position as the eyelid. You could also move it to the same position as the eyeball, because really all we care about is that this is in the center of the eyeball. So let's scale this up. And we want this to be just about to the outside edge. So about there. Like it's about the same diameter. Let's freeze transforms. And before we do anything else, let's make another one. We're going to call this bot wire curve. We'll need this one later to do the bottom eyelid, but we're not going to worry about it right now. So for this top wire curve, the way we set this up as a deformer is really, really easy. Or the way we set it up as a wire deformer. So setting up wire deformers is kind of weird and unintuitive, and it's not like other deformers, unfortunately. So here's what you do. You go to deform, you go to wire, and you select it. Then you have to select your geometry first. We're doing top lid. And then you hit enter. And then you select your wire, top wire curve, and then you hit enter again. And so you'll notice that if it's done correctly, it'll create this extra object in your scene that says top wire, base wire, right here. And so what the base wire is important. Essentially what it does is it's going to act like as a reference point for your wire so that it can calculate the deformation properly. We don't need to worry about it right now, but just keep this in the back of your mind. So what you'll notice, ideally, about this wire deformer is that when we move these parts around, we're moving around the eyelid. So, you know, this doesn't look very good, obviously. It's not really, it's not applying the right amount of weight to things. You might have to go through into your attributes and go to wire. I like to turn off rotation, but you don't have to. And you might have to crank your drop-off distance way up. Like, let's try 10. If we go to 10, how does this look? Oof, too much. Okay. Let's try to do 5, maybe? 5 is probably perfect. Alright, that doesn't look great, but we're going to keep moving on. You see the idea. Now, something that's important that I want to mention about this stage is always make sure you Control-Z reset these components back to where they were, because as far as I know, there's not really a good way to make them go back to normal without just eyeballing it, and we don't want to do that. So just make sure to Control-Z and make sure everything's back in the right place. Alright, so the next step, this is kind of annoying, but because there's no good way to get these component parts to go back to the right place, we need to turn them into clusters. And so essentially what a cluster is going to do is it's going to act like a constraint on each of these control vertices. But the cluster is an object that exists in our outliner that we can actually like zero out or attach controls to. So setting up clusters isn't very hard. All you have to do is like select your control vertex, and then hit this button here, create cluster. And so that'll make a cluster handle. So, you know, you just go around and you do this for all of these. So we've got our 8 clusters. You'll notice that if I just select the cluster and move it, it's moving around our curve. And I can select my cluster and go to the channel box and zero out its transforms, and it goes back to being a perfect circle. So this is perfect. This is like exactly what we want. Something, though, that I recommend, since if your character has 2 eyes, and it probably will, you're probably going to wind up with a lot of clusters, so it's good to name them. So let's go ahead and give these clusters a name. Okay, so all my clusters have a name now. The way I've chosen to do this is we start with 1 on the right side of the character's face, which is our left side. And then as we go counterclockwise, we go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You don't have to do it this way. The reason I did this is just because when you're animating the character, it's sort of intuitive to, you know, label this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're probably not going to see these ever, so we're not really worried about it. But just to keep it going around clockwise. You could do like left cluster 1, left cluster 2, center cluster, right cluster 1, right cluster 2, but like, you know, whatever, it's up to your own discretion. Anyway, something sucky about clusters is that they're not very animator friendly. So like, you know, if you drag like this, you can grab it, but like they're really hard to just like select outright, especially if like there are other objects really nearby where your cluster is. Like this one's okay because he's off in space, but like I'm really struggling to select this cluster. So it's a little bit easier if we just make controls for each of these clusters, which is a little unfortunate because it's kind of tedious, right? But, you know, riggers don't take the easy way out. So let's make some controls. We're going to need a lot of them. Let's also make it so that these controls are upright. I like to grab these components and just rotate them to be aligned with the x-axis, like this. And then we can call this I plus 1 control. Yeah. And then we're going to need a lot of these. So let's do I plus 1 offset. Always make offset groups. It's very important. If you don't know why, I feel like I've explained it a million times in class, but if you don't understand why, come talk to me and I'll explain it. I'm just duplicating these. I'm going to go ahead and give all of these like their own name. I'm not going to record that part. Just, you know, name them the same way that you name these eye clusters. Okay, they're all named. One other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of their offset groups and I'm going to rotate them to be facing out this way. Just because I find that a little bit easier to work with when animating, but again, this is one of those things that you can just do whatever you want, right? Okay, so we've got all our eye clusters. Now we have to do... We need to move these into place. So select the first one, select this first one, modify, match transform, match all transforms, and now we've got our control offset and our control sitting right there. And we just need to do this like 8 times, I guess. I'm using G on my keyboard. That's the hotkey to repeat the last action, and the last action I did was match transforms. So just by selecting them and hitting G, it's matching the transforms for all of them. There's a pro tip. Okay. Now we also need to do our parent constraints. We can do the same sort of process. Select your control. Don't select your offset group, right? When your animator is animating, they're doing it in the viewport, and when they select this, it's going to select the control, not the offset, okay? That's very important. Select the control, then select the cluster, and then do parent constraint. Control, cluster, G. Control, cluster, G. You get the picture. Okay, so now, when we grab this control in the viewport and move it, hip hip hooray, we're moving around the eye. So that's great. Cool, we're done. Just kidding, we're not done. Because you may be asking, well, this first part of your rig is so organized, and now we have all this crap everywhere. How do we deal with this? First I'm gonna hide these, I don't like looking at them. Okay, so let's go through how to actually set this up correctly. Because, let's see, if we move the global control, you know, obviously none of this eye stuff is going to go with it, and oh no, now it's not working, right? So, let's think about this. We need these to move with the rest of the head, and since these are for the top eyelid, we need them to move with this one. So, following that logic, it makes sense for us to put all these in a group. Let's call this top eyelid clus controls. And let's parent this underneath this control. So now we have this top lid control and our bottom lids are underneath it. But, oh, well, that's not great, right? Now this deformation kind of looks horrible, right? What's going on? What's happening is this is already skinned to a joint, right? And this is controlling that joint. So we're rotating the joint, which is rotating our mesh. But at the same time, we're also rotating our wire around. And we don't want that to happen, right? Essentially, we're telling this to move twice when we only want it to move once. So the solution to that is this base wire. Remember him? We hit him earlier. So what we're going to need to do is we need this base wire to follow the transforms of our eyelid joint. Okay, it's Gus from the future. I didn't actually do a very good job of explaining why we need to do this. So the idea is that when we move our wire away from our base wire curve, the math in Maya assumes that we're doing a deformation, right? Because that's how it works. The base wire stays still and the wire moves around. But when we're rotating the main eyelid control, we actually don't want it to say that there's any wire deformation happening. So by binding the wire curve to our joint, what we're doing is we're making it move with our main eyelid when we rotate the main control, and then we still have the freedom to move around our small controls and get the wire deformation we want. Okay, back to the video. Setting that up is really simple. We just find our top lid joint, we select our base wire, then you go to skin, bind skin, make sure bind method is set to closest distance, and apply. So, if I haven't screwed anything up, this should work. And beyond that, now we can still move these and get our shapes with the eyelid, which moves up and down. Awesome, great. So this rig is really simple, and so it's unlikely that anything's going to break by moving it around or scaling or anything like that. But on more complicated rigs, this stuff certainly is a lot more finicky. So I'll go through and show you how I like to organize the rest of this stuff here. So we're going to make a new group, and we're going to call this mod group. And mod stands for module. I'm not sure why I call it a mod group. You could call it a no-touch group. You could call it your Deformer group. You could call it your extra stuff group. I call it a mod group just because that's how my rigging scripts automatically generate the name, and I've just stuck with it. And I like to throw everything that's not a control, and that's not a joint, and that's not geometry into the mod group. Just stick it in there. We don't care about it, right? And this mod group is going to be put here underneath our rig, but above our global control. So it's like on the same level as our global control, essentially. But yeah, that should be about it for setting up this sort of thing. I'm going to leave setting up the bottom eyelid as an exercise for the viewer. A few notes, obviously because these are set up right in the middle. It might be a little confusing when you set up the bottom eyelid if you do it this way, because all of these controls are going to be overlapping with each other, so it's going to be hard to tell if you've selected a top or bottom eyelid control. I recommend taking these and like flattening out the bottom or something, just so that, you know, it's easier to tell that this is a control for the top eyelid and not the bottom. So you can do that if you want. I don't know, I'm not your dad. But yeah, hopefully this tutorial was super helpful. Hopefully you can get some cool, funny shapes with this. Might need to do a little bit of work to get this to not clip, but in my experience, you can kind of just pull these around to get into the right spot, right? But yeah, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck.